Hello, my good friends. So let's talk about freedom for a moment. What is freedom? Is it having enough money to live wherever you want to? Is it living in a country that allows you to start your own business? Is it saying whatever you want to, whenever you want to? To understand freedom, it might help to first know what it means to lack it, like how we can better understand sweetness by experiencing what is bitter. So the inverse of freedom is imprisonment or control. So the question would be, are we imprisoned? And if I told you that we are, you probably would not believe me. So first, before we dive into what freedom is, let's briefly understand what this imprisonment or control means. And we don't have to look far. We can look directly within ourselves. Most people don't even take one conscious breath each day. Just one single breath where they really pay attention without following the endless chatter of their mind. And if you're thinking to yourself that you do, in fact, breathe consciously all the time, that you've been totally aware the whole day, just think about it for a moment. Did you really take a breath today? Just one where you gave it all of your focus? Where has your mind been during this video? Maybe you've been thinking about what you're going to do after this. Maybe you've been unknowingly judging and creating all sorts of narratives about the person speaking to you during this video. Maybe you're thinking about clicking on a different video that would actually be more engaging. Have you been watching this video as if you were going to die today? How would you watch it differently? Maybe you wouldn't allow your mind to wander so much. Maybe you would treat this present moment here and now like the most precious truth in the world. And you would be interested in observing anything that takes you out of the present moment so that you can return to reality, being here and now with your full awareness. Why should we ever not do this? Would it be too far-fetched to say that we are essentially asleep if that's not what we're doing? After all, the thoughts in our mind are not real. They're constantly changing, and rarely do they sustain any sense of continuity. There might be an I within you that says, I want a snack at one moment, then an I within you that says, I want a new relationship in the next moment, then an I within you that has envy for that successful person on social media. So are each of these psychological I's the same? No, they are not. They are coming from different people within you. Even by hearing me say this, many of us may think we're listening. But are we really listening? Or have we become so identified with the concepts that we've learned in books and podcasts and university that we're unconsciously passing all of what we hear through a filter until all that remains is that which is consistent with our beliefs? See, identifying with our thoughts can be much like living in a dream. Just as your dreams at night are mere illusions, your thoughts are also nothing but concepts. And yet we find ourselves strangely attached to them as if they are parts of our physical body. Many believe that they have logically proved their belief systems to be true, but then others, using equally sound reasoning, may hold entirely different concepts as true. This leads to endless debates, and how can we ever know who is right? How can we ever know which theories, which beliefs are real? You can see the polarization of this very clearly in today's political climate. Yet all of these products of the intellect ebb and flow in accordance with the times and with the people. Movements go out of relevance like the trends in women's fashion. So it is profoundly crucial for us to realize and register that concepts and theories are not real. What is real is direct experience of the truth. Did you learn how to ride a bike when you were a kid by reading a manual? No, you toyed around with the bike until you learned from experience. But yet, as we get older, we get conditioned more and more to do the opposite of learning from experience. We worship degrees, theories, and logical belief systems, even though they are conceptual, completely false. I was getting a notebook the other day, and I noticed that the margins for little kids are much bigger. But when you get to older kids, they actually significantly decrease the amount of space you have to write. So as we get older, we literally confine ourselves to smaller and smaller margins of freedom. This is truly unfortunate because honing in on these things literally moves us in the opposite direction of freedom. It increases our conditioning, our prioritization of the intellect, that which wants to put everything in buckets instead of learning through practical experience in order to gain actual answers. And this is not the only obstacle. All this talk about theories and thinking is primarily in relation to our intellectual center. But remember that we have three primary brains. Aside from the intellectual brain, where our thinking and reasoning takes place, we have our emotional brain, where we have our feelings and sentiments. And third, we have our motor instinctual sexual brain, where we have movements, impulses, and sensations. And rarely do we realize how much the activity within these brains actually control us, especially in the sexual center, as that is the most energetically charged hub of our body. So if we observe what is going on within ourselves with objective awareness, we can see for ourselves these me's, these I's within us are taking control of each of these centers. And when we try to fulfill the needs of whatever psychological I might be controlling us at a given moment, we think we'll be whole once we gratify that ego. But really, this causes us to mistake pleasure for happiness. See, the egos are inconsistent and transient, so any gratification we may feel will be short-lived and will not be enough. A man possessed by an impulsive ego of lust chases after a woman that he finds attractive. Eventually, they may end up getting into a relationship, and while his pleasure is gratified in the beginning, that ego then gets replaced by another ego of lust for another girl. So the relationship ends, or it continues, but there's no more spark to it. Either way, the fleeting nature of the ego ultimately causes the cycle to continue, ultimately causes some sort of suffering, since the ego is never satisfied. So if it will never be enough, then how can anyone ever be truly happy? That's why we need to break free from being controlled by these egos in order to experience that which is infinite, true happiness, that which is bottled up in the endless desires and dreams of the ego. As the Dalai Lama says, love is the absence of judgment. And remember that we are at a standard 97% ego and 3% pure essence. And as long as our essence remains caged by the invisible strings of the ego, we cannot reveal our true nature. And this truth can only be known through direct inner work and experience, not external theories. I understand if someone viewing this thinks that this is all woo-woo and ridiculous, as the intellectual mind tends to doubt anything that doesn't conform to its current belief systems. But the truth is that many of us in today's age are oblivious to what our true nature is. So don't take my word for it, consider it yourself. What would happen if our egos were dissolved? If we were to say that the egos are the darkness within us, then what would be the light? The light is the being. It is pure consciousness. It is not concepts, beliefs, theories. It is formless reality that is not confined to words. And how would we act if we were in union with this essence, our true nature? Would we act out of fear, envy, desire, lust? No, we would not, because those are egos. Instead, we would act out of compassion, kindness, unconditional love, because that is what exists when there is no ego. If the ego is the conditioning, then the essence is the unconditional. When the darkness of ego is disintegrated, the light of consciousness is revealed. People hear the quote from Buddha that says, "Desire is the root of all suffering," and they might think, well, no, that's not true. It feels good when I eat chocolate. It feels good when I have sex with that person. It feels good when I buy that necklace. That's desire, and those don't cause me suffering. But before we dismiss what the Buddha said here, do we ever question why it is he said that? Do we ever question what it would really mean if we weren't attached to anything? It would mean that we would be able to experience the present moment without feeling that it's not enough. It would mean that we would feel whole, right here and right now, without being sucked into another dream about how things could be better. It would mean we'd be able to experience that which is infinite instead of the fleeting. If we manage to eliminate our me, myself, our I of drinking sprees, our I of vices, and our I of attachments that cause so much heartfelt sorrow within us, if we manage to eliminate those worries that torment our minds and make us ill, etc., then clearly what arrives is that which is timeless, beyond the body, beyond attachments, and beyond the mind, that which is truly beyond our comprehension and is called happiness. That is true freedom, and the key to accessing that lies completely within ourselves, not in the incessant chase for external satisfaction and information. Maybe a worker is tired of all the rules and regulations in the company he works for. Even if he manages to become financially free doing his own thing, he would still continue to be a slave of his desires so long as he does not confront his internal world. So revealing within us this pure essence, this being, is really a conscious effort over a long journey. And at this point in time, it is crucial that people follow this journey because unfortunately, most of humanity has fallen into the temptations of the ego, but that only pushes us deeper into unconsciousness, and it will never allow us to become solar bodies. What do I mean by that? Well, right now we are lunar bodies. This refers to the mechanics of nature. Just as a pendulum swings from one side to the other side, there is day, there is night, death and birth. We are all part of this machine of life, and the moon runs this machine. For example, have you noticed you may get more emotional during full moons, or that you have more vivid dreams during a full moon, or that crime rates tend to increase during full moon periods? Just like the high tide and low tide of the ocean, most humans are totally automated by the moon. Yes, we are mechanical creatures. In particular, our center of gravity lies within our false personality, which is created by our egos, and that center of gravity is programmed, keeping us asleep. I put a good quick read in the description if you'd like to learn more about this. It is similar to the concept of samsara and nirvana, which I explained in my video about the 3 poisons, and we could do a whole video on this. But we are so identified with our thoughts and feelings, we just don't realize our automated nature. So the point is that if we want freedom, true personalities, a solar body, we must work on our defects. As long as we don't look at our inner conditioning, our personality will be mechanical in accordance with the moon. As Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So what is the way out? How do we overcome our darkness? Well, we must look within and do practical inner work. We cannot eliminate our egos by listening to more podcasts and talking to more people. Our current human self in this physical body is all we need to look at. And in order to examine ourselves and look within, addressing this darkness, we need to differentiate between the external physical world and the internal world. Because as we've said in the past, our external world is a reflection of our internal world. Take a moment to really consider that and what that entails. What happens in the physical world? There are beautiful communities, luscious gardens, calm places, but there are also blind alleyways, secret cults, horrendous crimes, dangerous people that you would never dare to be around. Why should we know exactly where we are in our physical world, but have no idea where we are in our internal world? Does that not seem a bit ignorant? Imagine not knowing the rooms that exist in your own house. That is what this is like. But somehow, in our current state of humanity, this is completely normal. We live in a house that we know perfectly well in the physical world, but within, we barely know any of the rooms that exist in our house. We don't even realize the rooms we may be in at a given time. We just get tossed from room to room without even knowing it. Now, some of our inner voices might be quite virtuous, but the truth is, some of these psychological I's, these me's within us, are so abominable that we would never dare to admit them. Some of these I's within us are rooted so deep in the infernos of our desires that we may never admit we would have them. And I know that many people might be thinking, well, not in my case. Fortunately, I don't have such demons buried in the depths of my subconscious, and I'm very internally aware of myself. But how often do we really take stock of this and observe ourselves? How often do we pause to acknowledge the depths of our being, from the gardens of peace to the alleyways of animalistic malice within us? With some honest self-observation, we may be appalled by what we see. So if there were people that we thought were dangerous and destructive in the physical world, how would we deal with them? Well, first we would need to observe them, see where they are lurking and who they commune with. then we would be able to comprehend them, understand their roots, so that we know we've captured the right people. Only once we've located and understood them would we be able to sentence them and transform them into virtue. Obviously, I am making an analogy here because just as we would in the physical external world, internally we need to do the same thing. First, observe these egos and their corresponding aggregates, then comprehend them, and only when we've seen and understood the egos can we know where to direct our sword to eliminate them. That is the three-step process: observation, comprehension, and elimination. The fire of elimination renews our nature and allows us to rid us of our defects and start becoming a solar body. Fire renews nature unceasingly. This can be translated into Latin as ignis natura renovator integra, and I've been intentionally avoiding any religious references in this video because we are trying to go beyond religious boundaries here, but this is why INRI is written on the cross. So what does this look like in practical terms? Well, first it means moment-to-moment self-observation so that these egos don't go under our radar and that we don't act on any of the egos that we might be noticing. And then it means that we take time to meditate on an ego and play through an ego that we've been noticing within ourselves. It means we review the security cam footage, so to speak, where we choose a scene from our life that we play back and watch again in order to really comprehend the ego. And during this block of meditation, which some may also consider to be prayer, we observe, comprehend, and eliminate this chosen ego. If we are observing ourselves throughout the day, we can come into this meditation prepared because we've already begun the observation process. If you want a guided meditation on this to go more in depth and resolve any confusion, I put a link in the description for you to follow. As we are disintegrating the I's within us, eliminating the ego, we are giving birth to something within us, the spirit. If you've made it this far into the video, it might be of your interest to continue watching. At this point, I'm going to continue into some maybe precarious territory for some, because to anyone who is not in tune with the esoteric work we've been describing here, you are obviously welcome to not watch the video, because what I'm about to discuss is not for the intellect to grasp or to make sense out of. It is not to be understood through thinking and the norms of our programmed beliefs, but rather through the authentic hands-on practice of the individual and personal experience to go after the truth and genuine longing to reach your full potential. So if some are maybe confused or even angered by this video, I understand. And for those who do want to hear, let them hear. So as we commit to the death of the ego, we are revealing this triumphant force within us. This force is the embodiment of sacrifice, the sacrifice of our psychological self, a willingness to act selflessly out of compassion for humanity instead of acting in accordance with our egos. This is a seed that grows within us that faces cruelty and pain in exchange for liberation of the pure essence and real genuine love for other people. No matter how full of temptation somebody might be surrounded by, with this force within them, they act out of compassion, no matter the circumstances. And everybody has this energy, this seed accessible within them, but only through working on ourselves and acting out of compassion for others can we incarnate the awakening of this seed. It is what our ego is bottling up. So what is this energy called? It is called our higher self, Christ consciousness, the Buddha nature. Now, I know when people hear Christ, they think of Jesus Christ. And yes, Jesus is a great master. But we must not forget that Christ is the energy, the force, the seed of our spirit. Christ is a title that refers to the Anointed One. And of course, you do not have to use this word Christ as long as you are awakening this seed within you. But this word goes beyond religious boundaries, goes beyond theories and morals and conceptual labels. Many people prefer to embody this as a statue with clear-cut dogmas, but in practice, it is the seed within us, in our heart, that embodies pure, unconditional love and the dissolvement of the ego. This obviously is a very sacred term, and you do not need to use this term to refer to that seed within us, but this is why Christ is commonly misunderstood. Although this Christ consciousness acts out of love, most people impose belief systems and personal histories onto the word Christ, even though they may claim to worship it. In reality, it is within us, and we all have this seed which manifests in an authentic way for everybody, according to their true personality. But most people feed animal desires and egos instead of awakening this seed. Obviously, overcoming all of those desires and attachments is the most difficult thing to do in the world, and frankly, it is our life's work. But diamonds cannot be made without great pressure. Many masters have accomplished this and fully fused their human body with divinity by dissolving their ego and fully incarnating the cosmic Christ. Jesus Christ is the perfect example of someone who did this publicly, and other masters such as Samael Aun Weor and the Buddha have fully incarnated the Christ consciousness as well. So again, it is not about making sure we worship the right figure or the right word. It is about awakening this seed inside. And just as a mother and father give birth to a child in the physical world, we have a mother and father in our internal world as we give birth to this cosmic spirit within us. In the general sense, they are known as our divine mother and divine father. So whatever religion you may or may not follow, this is the overarching theme of the journeys and characters that these religions illustrate. So what really matters is within you, the individual, to do their own inner work and not worry about what labels to identify with. Now, if this all sounds very mystical and silly to you, again, this may not be the video for you. But if we do understand that the external world is a reflection of our internal world, this will make perfect sense because we have a mother and father in the physical external world. Now, we won't be getting too in depth on this in this video, but these divine forces help us with eliminating our defects. Our divine mother is referred to differently across many religions. She is Virgin Mary, Mother Kundalini, Divine Feminine, or for some people, it is simply their intuition. However you perceive this, each and every human holds a unique form of her within, just as every human was born from a mother. And working with these forces is essential, and I'm not going to be able to explain the power of Kundalini here, so I've put resources in the description so that you can check these out and work with these forces. But to sum this up and oversimplify all of this divine importance, the point is that we hold a lot of energy in our tailbone where our sexual center is. In fact, the creative energy of our sexual center is where the seed of our spirit lies. It is the seed. This energy can either go downwards and outwards and feed the ego and desire, which is known as the kunda buffer, or it can go inwards and upwards and feed our spirit. If one calls upon Mother Kundalini, who is represented by a serpent, to dissolve their egos, the serpent, which lies at the base of our spinal column in the sexual center, goes upwards and allows us to awaken this seed, opening up our pure essence and perceiving higher dimensions. This ascending serpent symbolizes the awakening of consciousness as the ego disintegrates. There are many esoteric symbols of this, and I cannot get into it in this video, but you can see this is why the meaning of the serpent is often misconstrued or not looked on. But anyways, if instead we follow temptations and desires, the serpent instead goes downwards and outwards, feeding our egos and the kunda buffer, as symbolized in the Garden of Eden, which brings about unconsciousness and further attachment to our desires, keeping us totally asleep. I quote Samael Aun Weor here, who says, "Those who make the mistake of attributing all of the sinister negative characteristics of the descending serpent to the ascending serpent definitely fail in the work upon themselves. The evil consequences of the abominable kunda buffer organ can only be annihilated with the kundalini. The hypnotic power of the descending serpent has submerged humanity in unconsciousness. Only the ascending serpent can awaken us." Of course, we're not going to get into a whole discussion about the divine forces. Ultimately, we need to observe ourselves and meditate on our defects so that we can become true human beings. Otherwise, we remain limited to our desires. So I hope this makes sense. We are essentially working on revealing our essence from the egos it is bottled up in, and that is our path to real freedom. Clearly, in our current world, there is an extreme amount of darkness, but that means that there is more opportunity for even bigger change. With all of the noise in our society, all of the consumption and entertainment and temptations, we are in a position to radically invert our relationship to it. Instead of floating around in all of the noise, we can come back to our own selves through renouncing our identifications with the endless chatter around us and in our minds. We can return to the freedom we hold within and actually have a continuity of purpose that is not limited to transient, ever-changing egos. All we have to remember is that the work is internal. Any dissatisfaction or undesirable states we may be in during our life, we are completely responsible for. The second we understand that we can't make ourselves happy by moving into a new house or starting a new relationship or going on a new trip, that is when we'll be able to confront our inner world and really look at ourselves. We'll be able to realize that self-discovery does not involve reading the right books from the people that align with our viewpoints or following the right people on social media. Self-discovery and the revelation of our inner freedom comes from picking up our sword and diving into the depths of our own selves. Now, more than ever, is when it is important to do this, because we are faced with temptations of endless external pleasures. And with society's capacity to spread information, I think it's possible for us to make a massive transformation to humanity before it's too late if the right information is spread. We can encourage more and more people to stop feeding the Kunda buffer within and create a world that is more kind and enjoyable. I can already see more and more people awakening right now, and I think the pandemic really helped with this. So my goal here is not to make people feel bad or guilty for the defects that we have within ourselves. My point is that this is the imprisonment to which I am referring. This is how we are imprisoned, and as long as we convince ourselves that these ego entities within us don't exist, our pure essence will remain bottled up inside those draining, endless egos. They really are draining. People say they feel exhausted, and it's because these egos really soak up our energy and attention. This is how they continue living. And yes, this is why it is called the secret path. Rarely does anyone want to admit how much muck and filth they carry in their depths. They would rather pity themselves and find friends that will listen to their woes. But this path cannot be secret anymore. Look at our society. Do you really, genuinely think that we can keep doing what we're doing? Think about cheese, bro. Do you know how much the mass production of cheese has increased by over the last century? It is ferociously exponential. Now, apply that merciless growth to every industry in the world. Then you're left with total chaos and people who are still starving to death. If we cared about our real selves and fellow humans as much as we care about money or sex, maybe this would not be the case. It is time to destroy this invincibility complex that humans have, to think that we are somehow immune to anything bad actually happening to us. It is time to understand that revolutionary inner psychological change is the only way we can steer ourselves away from the course we are on. It is funny how the cure to all of this is completely in ourselves. The cure to our catastrophic state does not directly lie in the elections, the corporate elite, the social media. No, the cure to humanity's current state is within the humans themselves. We need to stop looking outward and look entirely within. And this needs to happen this exact moment, here and now, so that humanity can stop sleepwalking into its demise. Only by taking off the chains can one experience true freedom. It is simply very hard to take off the chains when you don't realize you're wearing them and you don't like the way it feels to look at them and take them off one by one over time. But I have faith that more of us will self-observe, drastically transform, and liberate ourselves. So thank you guys for watching. Please let me know if there's anything you want to go more in depth on in future videos, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Peace out.